Julian Schnabel's a great director, Janusz Kaminski's an amazing cinematographer, but you gotta give credit to screenwriter Ronald Harwood, who came up with the visual motif of going first-person subjective, literally putting you inside the head of the protagonist in The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, and man, was that a great idea. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, Senior Editor for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, and I was really excited to have screenwriter Ronald Harwood with us to discuss his new film, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. He's a heck of a character and a heck of a Q&A, and yes, this film has subtitles. Don't be scared, it's in French, but if you're cool enough to be listening to this podcast, you can handle a foreign film. It's one of the more original films of the year, and you'll really be glad you saw it, so don't miss The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. And by the way, today's Creative Screenwriting Podcast is sponsored by the all-new Movie Magic Screenwriter 6. Movie Magic Screenwriter is professional screenwriting software used by top Hollywood screenwriters and TV writers. Stop by Screenplay.com to test drive the new Movie Magic Screenwriter 6, and while you're there, read some free screenwriting articles and interviews with some of the most successful screenwriters working today. The all-new Movie Magic Screenwriter 6 is available at Screenplay.com. But now, without further ado, let's jump right onto the stage of our packed screening for The Diving Bell and the Butterfly right after I introduce screenwriter Ronald Harwood. We always like to start with breaking in stories, so we're going to go way back in time here. You originally grew up in South Africa, is that correct?
I did. I was born there and educated there.
And you moved to England to pursue a career in theater in 1951, I believe, and you went to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts?
Yeah, I wanted to be an actor. I didn't know how bad an actor I was then. Nobody else did either. Yes, I went to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. I lasted a year, not because they threw me out or anything, but because my mother couldn't afford to keep me there longer. My father just died. And it was the luckiest day of my life. And I became a dresser to a famous Shakespearean actor of the day called Sir Donald Wolfett. And that's how I started.
Talk about what you were doing as a dresser, because, I mean, you eventually wrote a play about it called The Dresser.
And we made a movie of it.
That's right. Talk about what that was like.
And what that was like, I loved it. I was a very good servant. I never felt demeaned. And you were the guardian of the flame of the... This was a big Shakespeare company, and anybody who wanted to see him had to come through me. It was hard work. I mean, you had to dress him. He was a very difficult man. I once got his tights inside out during a quick change. That wasn't so good. But he became my kind of patron, and he was wonderful to me. But it was for very little money. And, you know, when you're young, you don't give a damn. It was just, I loved it. And I was his dresser. And when he found out I was Jewish, he made me his business manager. And I was 21. I mean, he was an extraordinary fellow, and it taught me the whole theatre thing. I learnt about the theatre. I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
So you were obviously keeping your eyes open the whole time, exposed to a lot of Shakespeare. Talk about making the transition to TV writing, which was, I believe, how you broke in as a writer.
No, I broke in as a novelist.
Oh, is it where you wrote the
I mean, I was very I just married in 1959. I've only married one wife, so I'm very boring. Thank you. It is very unusual. It's the most unusual thing about me. We married in 59. We've been living together 2 years before that. So we've been together for 50 years. Her father... Oh, don't be so sentimental. Her father ran this sounds ridiculous. This is what happened. Her father ran an office machinery company. He was director of an office machinery company. He gave me for my birthday, November the 9th, 3 days ago, in 1959, he gave me a typewriter, a Swedish typewriter called a Facet, which they represented in England. And I put pages in the typewriter. I was very out of work. I was about to take... labouring work on what we call a flyover when it goes over a road. What do you call that? A
bridge? A bridge?
No, it
goes over a road?
Like a spaghetti junction thing. Overpass. Correct.
All right, I was close.
I was just about to take work on that. She was pregnant too. And I started to type. And in 3 weeks, I had written a novel about South Africa called, in England, All the Same Shadows, but when it was published here, it was called George Washington, September, Sir. It was in the first person of a Zulu boy. And in a way, it was autobiographical, but I didn't know that. I didn't know what I was doing. I just typed. But when I got onto the last page, my wife was out shopping. There was a whole revelation of the plot, which I hadn't known was there. And I started to hyperventilate, paced the little flat we were living in, and I knew at that moment that I was onto something in myself. I didn't really know what, but I knew it was something I'd never touched in myself before. And it was rather marvellous and exhilarating. And then a friend of ours came to dinner and he said, "What have you been doing?" I said, "I've written a novel." He said, "I know a publisher." That's how I got in.
Just that easy, I tell you.
It was easy. And then I wrote a play for television, which was done, and then I was put under contract for 2 plays a year for £1,000 a year. That's about $2,000. And in that I was rich. It was the first time I ever made a living.
Talk about going from plays to television and kind of managing both as a young writer. I mean, was format messing you up at all?
You know, my background being the theatre, I knew...
No, I mean when you were writing for the screen.
For the screen?
For the small screen. Because, you know, in those days it wasn't easy to get your hands on a script and find the format and stuff like that. Sounds simple these days.
Well, you know, I always say to young writers when they come ask me these things, that's the easiest thing to learn is the format. It's what's in the scene that's bloody difficult.
Absolutely.
So I don't know, I looked at a script. There were scripts about. I think a director friend gave me a script. He said, "That's how it's laid out." And I wrote a play. And in those days, it was much more related to the theatre than to film. Television borrowed from the theatre, and only later did it become that you could film and put long sequences in. In those days, we did it live in the studio. And there was something called... I forget what it was called, some tape. You could do some sections with a tape thing. It wasn't called tape in those days, but anyway, you could pre-record something. And the actors would run like hell from one set to another, change clothes. And then I was very lucky because in my second play, a young actor was cast in the leading role. It was called Private Potter, and he was called Tom Courtney. And he was a discovery then. He was just at bursting on the scene. He did The Loneliness of the Long-Distance Runner and other things. And he's remained my friend ever since. We've done lots together. He did The Dresser, the film of The Dresser. And so that's how I started. And from that, 20th Century Fox wanted a screenplay of A High Wind in Jamaica. I think I was about the 38th writer to be so employed. And the director was a terrific director called Alexander McKendrick, who started a film school or a film department at Berkeley. He was a brilliant director. He had great difficulties communicating, and he had nearly had a breakdown of some kind, so he went into teaching, which was lucky for his students.
No, he's legendary. You know, something about directing, though, you've had a very long, distinguished career, and to my knowledge, you've never really taken up directing.
Oh, no, I don't direct. I don't direct because I want to be loved. You cannot be a director if you want to be loved, and I do. I have directed. I've directed 2 or 3 of my own plays. I opened the Steppenwolf Theatre in Chicago, the new Steppenwolf Theatre with Albert Finney. We did a play of mine, but I'm not very good at it.
But for the screen, you've never directed.
No, I have not. I tell you, the night after I won the Academy Award, the next morning I told my agent, Jeff Berg, I said, "Jeff, listen to me. I do not want to direct." And he lost 25 years. His face became unlined again. He was a boy. I just have no interest in it. I have no interest in the technical side of filming. I hate going on the set. I think it's the most boring process in the world. I mean, to watch an actor open and close a door 18 times seems to me pathetic. And only 2 people know what's going on, the director and the lighting cameraman. And if you come and visit on a set as the writer, the only people that come up to you are the property people and say, "Is this the right buckle for his shoes?" And I've got better ways of spending my time, really.
I like that answer. I mean, you just brought it up. I was going to bring it up later, but I mean, you have worked twice with Roman Polanski.
I like going to see Roman direct because we're friends and we have a good time. I mean, there's long gaps between shots and we go back to his room and...
What have you learned from him as a storyteller? What have you learned from him as a filmmaker?
precision. Absolute precision. When Roman and I did The Pianist, it was the first thing we did together, after I delivered the first draft, he did one of those wonderful things. He's a lovely man. He said, no, it's very, very good. One or two things I want to fix. Well, that's a sinister remark, I tell you. We were locked up for 5 weeks together in a house outside Paris. And it was the best time I ever had with a director. We started at 10 in the morning and finished at 6 at night. We laughed all day long. I think that was a defense mechanism against the material, you know. It was grim.
How was adapting different from this adaptation?
From Diving Bell.
From Diving Bell. I mean,
there are similarities.
What's your approach for adaptation?
To be true to the book. To be true to what I'm adapting. I can't bear those things where they say, you know, it needs to be made more accessible, we should update it, we should make Hamlet a woman. I really can't bear that, and I'm not good at it, so that's why I suppose I don't like it. I just do I try to decide what the book's about, and be true to that.
When you break down a book, do you start with an outline? Do you kind of rough it out like that?
No, what I do with a long book, I mean, I've got Love in the Time of Cholera. I did it with Diving Bell too. I make an index as you would for a non-fiction book. And I underline on the page of the book anything I think important, and I put the page number down and make an index. And then it's good as a reference, but what it's very good at is learning the book. So you absorb the book. It's got to become part of you as if it were your own. So then you know what the heart is and be true to that heart.
What was something really specific that changed during that 5 weeks with Polanski when you guys were fixing those, quote, one or two things? As you
specific, I mean, it was mostly detail, and he didn't change much in the structure, but there were details, because he was in the Krakow ghetto. The Pianist is set in the Warsaw ghetto, which was quite a different experience from the Krakow ghetto, but nevertheless, he was a little boy at in that time, and he knew this stuff very well. There was just one. I'll give you a kind of. Can I give you one instance?
Please.
If you haven't seen the film, it'll be difficult for you. But there's a scene where the Jews are being herded onto a train to be taken to Auschwitz, and the pianist, the hero of the story, is pulled out of that line by a hand and told to go. That's how he escapes. And I wrote it when I did my draft, I did it exactly as he describes it in the book. Have the guy pull him out, and he runs. And when we came to that scene, Roman said, let's do what happened to me. When I was pushed out of the wire of the Krakow ghetto, I started to run away. He was a little boy. I started to run away, and the man said to me, don't run, walk. And we put that in the movie. I would never have invented that. I don't know, it's just something that's so truthful and real. And that's the kind of thing he injected, because it's from his own experience and his own blood flow.
One of the most, I mean, you won an Academy Award for that film, for your adaptation, so congrats on that, of course.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
One of the interesting things I've always wanted to ask you, actually, about that film, as a writer, there's so much silence. What was it like for you to write silence on the page?
Oh, it was wonderful. Not to have to write dialogue, it was wonderful. We made a decision at the beginning. I think on our first meeting in his flat in Paris, I said to him, I'm not boasting now, but this is how it went, because you'll see why. I said, Roman, we must preserve the point of view, because it was all from the pianist's point of view, and we kept that. And I said, we mustn't invent a friend or have a voiceover. He said, you're crazy? Of course we mustn't invent a friend. Oh, Roman always thinks he's thought the idea before you have, you know, that's his technique. Anyway, that's what we did. And I had terrible trouble beginning the film. And he phoned, he was on holiday in Ibiza, he had a house there then, and he phoned me, I think 3 times, and I simply lied. I said, it's going frightfully well, it's terrific. I hadn't really put a word on paper. And the 3rd time he phoned, I said, Roman, I'm going to make a confession. I don't know how to begin. He said, it's called The Pianist. Start with him playing the piano. So that's what I did, and it just went from then on. It was wonderful.
It's good advice. What's your rule for invention when you're doing an adaptation? Because, I mean, obviously you said the importance of being reverent really means
it's not
something to you.
reverence. I think just true to it.
True to it, okay.
You know when you're true to it. You know when you're going outside it. Of course you have to invent it.
Right.
Of course you have to make inventions. I mean, if you take this film, The Diving Bell, which you've just seen, I was very, very stuck. I didn't know how to begin that for 2 weeks. I'd read the book long before it came to me. And I thought it was a marvelous testament to human triumph over terrible adversity. And then Kathy Kennedy asked me to do it, and I said yes without rereading it. It's a very rash thing to do. And the deal was done, and then I thought I'd better read it and start work. And I thought, my God, I don't know what to do. It's totally impossible. And I was on the point of phoning my agents and saying, I can't go on with this. I have to give the money back. Now, nothing concentrates the mind more wonderfully. And as I was about to phone her, I think late one evening, this idea came that the camera should be him. And the camera should do the blinking. Well, that's true to the book, of course, but the point of view was interesting to me, and it freed me, and then I was able to write it rather quickly, as a matter of fact.
What did they think of your pitch when you said that? Because I
didn't say it. I don't pitch. I discover by writing, and I wish the movie industry wasn't so organized that they wanted insurance policies in advance. Because
so you never told them your approach for that?
I was never asked for it, and they know I don't do it, because I'm very bad at it. I don't know what my approach is until I start to write. I don't know what the characters are until I discover them by writing. That's how I work, and I've worked like that for nearly 50 years. So I'm not going to change it now. And I just wish they'd give young writers a chance. Find out what it is while you're writing. That's what all novelists do, what all playwrights do. They don't make detailed charts of the arc of the thing and the character developments. They discover it. And, you're writing away and you think, God, it would be good to go to this scene. Well, if you've already pitched another thing, you can't deviate. I never checked with Kathy Kennedy when I came up with this idea of the point of view. I didn't phone her or anything. I just felt it was right.
I think it's brilliant. I think what you did is absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
It's immersive storytelling because you really trap us in there, for the, quote, locked-in syndrome that they discuss in the movie with the lead character. So once you got that idea, how difficult was it for you to write your script from there? How long did it take you to write?
About 5 weeks after that. It freed me completely. It's not a very long book. It's only 134 pages. It was a question of selection. You see, what it did was enabled me to use his voiceover. You could hear his voice. And I had to decide what it was about. Well, I'd already decided that. I thought, this is about triumph over disaster. So anything that fed into that, I was able to use. But before I'd come up with the idea, I tried to imagine what it would be like to be locked in and blink one eye after every letter, and I used to get a constriction in the throat and feel terribly claustrophobic. Once I got the idea, I was freed from that because I knew the audience would then have to go through it with you.
What's really incredible about doing it that way, because how many minutes in the film would you say it is before we cut outside of his body? It seems like 20, 25.
Schnabel cut out before I wanted to. I wanted to keep it much, much later, and I think he made a very, very good decision to come out when he did, because some people I know have come up to me and said, God, I was so relieved when we weren't blinking anymore, And I think he probably was right about that. I'm rather constricted by form. Once I've established the form, I like to stay with it, but I think he was right.
Well, it's interesting because in the first act, pretty much you're inside of his body. Then we start getting a little distance, actually getting to see him after the glimpses in the mirror and stuff like that. And then once we get a real sense of him, we start actually exiting his body to the fact it plays like an old traditional film, the way you'd expect, and then he dies. And I thought it was interesting because you're inside and the exit is timed with his death.
Well, that's exactly how it is. That I did in the screenplay, but I kept it pretty well. I kept the point of view, I think, pretty well to the last few pages. But Julian broke it earlier, and I think it was a very good decision because the diving bell image is locked in. I've never been in a diving bell, but Mathieu Almeric said it's a terrifying experience. He went into one. And the butterfly is the imagination and the memory floating free. So perhaps I was over cautious in not breaking it earlier.
What kind of research did you end up doing? Did you meet his family, some of the people that worked with him?
I met two people. I met, I'll call her the wife. She wasn't actually his wife. She was the mother of his children. And she's a lovely, lovely woman who lives in Paris and still saddened by the fact that not so much by his death, but by the fact that he left her before the stroke happened. And I talked to her for a bit about him, and then I asked if I could meet one of the physiotherapists. And she brought to see me the physiotherapist who invented the alphabet, the way of saying the alphabet. And she was very reticent. She didn't want to tell me much. She had that sort of client confidentiality feeling about her. But she did do the alphabet for me, and it was so beautiful. I thought, well, that should be a rhythm if we can get it like background music throughout the movie. And that was the only things I did. And I talked to a neurologist friend who lives here, as a matter of fact, is retired. He retired very young. They make a lot of money, neurologists. And he talked to me about the locked-in syndrome. There's not much to say, really, because that's what it is. And no one knew that the mind and the imagination and the life of the person was so active, because they associated the brain damage with the damage to those faculties that enable you to imagine and remember. They never knew.
A lot of times in adaptations, it becomes necessary to condense characters. I was actually quite impressed that you didn't, in which I could have seen someone making the physiotherapist, possibly the person that was helping him write the book, but you switch it up. I mean, was there ever a consideration or pressure?
No. What do you mean, from producers?
Yeah.
No. No, Kathy is one of the model Paragon producers. She didn't interfere with me at all. But there's a very important fact about that book. The girl who takes the
notes for the book,
notes, the actual one they employ. If you remember, they phone his publisher where he had a deal to write a book.
Right, and she's in the office.
You see, he always wanted to write a book. That's the secret sort of subtext of his life. And he died the moment he finished. Well, the moment he knew it was a success. That's also very interesting, I think. I understand that.
Talk about your writing habit for a second. When you write, how many hours a day do you write?
About, let me see, I get up, I told you it's boring, be prepared. It's a cure for insomnia, this is what I'm going to tell you now. I get up at 7 o'clock every morning, roughly, 5 past 7. I go and make coffee. My wife joins me in my study. We smoke several cigarettes and drink a lot of coffee. I then make breakfast. I wanted you to know I'm virtuous in that way. That's because I eat breakfast, she doesn't. I make the breakfast and then I shower. I have to shower. I don't know why. I suppose it's something from childhood, Jewish mother or something. Anyway, I shower, shave, and I then go to work. I'm at work about 8:30, 8:45, and I work till 1:45. And I go through and I watch the news on television and have lunch. And I always have a sleep every afternoon, read for half an hour and sleep for an hour. And I go back to work at about 4:30. You're bored? Are you asleep? No. And I don't write in the afternoon. I correct what I've done during the morning. I can go on, but I very seldom do.
This is very strange because you're the seventh writer this year that said that part of their work habit is to sleep during the day. No, I just interviewed the Coen brothers for their new movie, and they said...
I'm pleased. I'm a great admirer.
Yeah, well, they said that part of their process really is taking naps. What is it? Is it like you're sleeping on what you just did?
Jeff, I'll tell you what happened. When I was a kid, a young actor, I read an interview with Noel Coward. And he said, it's essential to go to sleep every afternoon and don't lie on the bed. Get undressed, get into your pajamas or naked or whatever, however you sleep, and sleep for an hour and a half every afternoon. I thought, that's the way to success. That's what I'll do. And...
But it's almost like
I've done it since I was a kid.
It seems like it lets your subconscious wonder a little, and it settles some of the things you were battling in the first part of your day.
But Jeff, I was given wonderful advice as a young writer on that very subject. I was fortunate enough to know Graham Greene, a great English novelist.
Wow, I'm impressed.
Oh, you're good.
Really, he's amazing. I mean it.
I don't drop names that are not going to impress you, believe me.
That is a big name.
Anyway, Graham Greene said to me, only stop when it's going well. It's the most wonderful advice I was ever given. You never stop when you're stuck. Because then you get into that, what you just described, that pacing, going for a walk. I used to have baths. I thought that would free me. All he did was clean me. And I just do that now, and if I've got a scene and it's going well, I stop.
But does it become easy to pick up after you come back to it?
Only then does it become easy, because you know where you are, you know what's going to happen. You don't go to bed at night with that awful thing, where am I going, what am I going to do tomorrow?
And we're talking about the easy times. How do you handle writer's block if you get it?
I've never had one.
Okay, that's great.
I'm sorry, it's just how it is.
That's
you
wonderful.
know the famous story of a writer's block? I don't know these people, so I'm not dropping names now.
No.
But J.D. Salinger, whom you all know, had a terrible, terrible writer's block. And he went to a lecture by Somerset Maugham in New York. And Somerset Maugham said, my routine is to write every morning. And if I've nothing to write about, I write, I am Somerset Maugham, I am Somerset Maugham. He said, something eventually comes. And Salinger, great, I'll try that. He said, I went back to my room, I put down the page, I picked up my pen and I wrote, I am Somerset Maugham. Nothing happened.
I like that. I think I might adapt that myself. I think I might come up with that. That's good that you never get writer's block. In this movie, there's a lot of people that visit our protagonist. It is, if you've ever seen any TV movie of the week or melodrama, that's where they always fall apart. It's always the kind of balancing the line of sentiment and sap. You balanced it perfectly. It never got sappy. Honestly, the longest monologue is when Pierre Moussin comes to talk about being, hijacked. Talk about balancing that and making sure that it never got sappy.
Well, I hope you'll say the same thing about The Pianist, that it's not sentimental.
I love The Pianist. It was a great movie.
I think it's something to do with one's personality and character. I think in the case of Polanski and me, you'd be very hard pushed to find two less sentimental people. But the fact is that if you're true to what you're doing, it's impossible to be sentimental. It's only if you manipulate that you become sentimental or sappy. And I didn't have any temptation to manipulate. There seemed no reason. Also, there was this great advantage that the difficulty of communicating with him was immense. Of course, as the movie gets on, they get more expert at it. His wife, the one I met, could still do it fluently. She could go through the alphabet. They did it daily or twice a week or whatever it was. So if you're true to the scene and true to the characters, it's very difficult, unless you want to manipulate. You want to have violins under or what, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Exposition is something that's always really difficult for writers, and it was beautifully done here, in which in traces in Act 1, we slowly learn that he was the editor of Elle. We slowly see, just him in a mirror. You showed so much restraint.
I did much more mirror and reflection thing in the original screenplay of him passing things on the wall, and you could see him, because that's the only way you could see him. And just as a footnote, when I was young, very young, about 11 or 12, I saw a film called The Lady in the Lake, directed by Robert Montgomery.
I was going to ask you about that, sir.
Well, it came back to me afterwards. It made a terrific impression on me, obviously.
Yeah.
It's a detective story told from the detective's point of view. The detective is the camera.
It's first-person subjective.
First-person subjective. And the only time you see him, he's in a mirror. And it's Robert Montgomery, who was a famous movie star of his day. And I remember being absolutely awed by the way he did it. And whether that was in my mind, because I didn't check back and think, God, has this been done before? I just knew I was right when I was doing this. But I think it was something to do with that. And exposition was easier in this because you had his voiceover. It's very difficult when two characters meet saying, when did we last meet, Jeff? You mean we haven't met before? That's difficult exposition.
Difficult for the audience and the writer.
It is.
But so, the other thing is you showed a lot of restraint on your flashbacks, too, because, it could have been a very heavy movie for flashbacks because you could at least get away from, the guy that can't communicate. So, actors would be more attracted to it. I was glad you didn't, but explain, just out of curiosity, the flashback when they go to Lourdes, is it?
To Lourdes, yes.
Lourdes. I'm curious where the significance was for you on that.
Oh, because firstly, it's what he did.
No, but there's so many things you could have shown about his life that's a long stretch. It's a good stretch.
Well, that's the other thing. It's a good long stretch. Also, I find it very funny. And anything that amuses me, I hope will amuse an audience. The curious thing about Jean-Dominique Bauby was he was never self-pitying. That's another reason you could keep sentimentality out, because he never pitied himself. He was angry about the condition, and he was amused by it in a wry and very interesting way, and it sort of chimed with my view, and that sequence, the lured sequence, I thought it's wonderful going off with a girl and she wants to buy a statue of the Virgin Mary. It seemed to me marvelous. I don't know, just made me laugh.
What was also interesting, when you're telling a first-person subjective story like this, it means that the protagonist isn't always as involved in the drama, more so the people around him are, and you experience it through his eyes. Yeah. I thought the scene with Celine on the phone with Inez was very interesting.
I'm so grateful, because that's, I think, the best scene I've ever written.
Talk about writing it.
Well, there's a reference in the book to the other woman telephoning him. And it doesn't go much into detail. And as I was writing, this is the discovery by writing process, I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if his wife was in the room and had to do the interpreting for him? That's all I thought. And I did it, and I don't think I changed very much. I just put it down. It was just it's a theatre scene, you know. It's a sort of scene you'd put in a play, where the least likeliest person is present. And actually, that's pretty good advice. If you're having trouble with a scene, put the least likeliest person in, and it'll have life. But in this case, I was so pleased and self-satisfied. No, I wasn't self-satisfied. I was pleased with it. Yes, I was.
It's very interesting because, I mean, you have this subversion of drama a little from your protagonist because he's a watcher, not a participant. But, what he says I found very interesting. He says, "Each day I wait for you." Was he being mean to Celine? I mean, because you could interpret that so many ways, or you could interpret him as being catty of, "Why haven't you come and visited me?"
I think it was more that. I think it was a reproach. And she didn't... Apparently, he lied about it. I didn't research that. I didn't go and find out this. I didn't meet the other woman. And I think Julian did. I think Julian talked to people who knew her. And I think he stopped her coming to see him rather than her not wanting to come and see him, because he didn't want to be seen in this awful state. Our way is better for the movie, because it just is. I mean, I just know it. I can't explain it, but I just know it is better this way. So that's what we did.
The creative collaboration between your script, Janusz Kaminski's photography, and of course Julian's direction, I think makes this one of the most creative interpretations of the year, without a doubt.
Thank you.
Talk about this, what you learned from working with Julian, and what that relationship was like.
I didn't work with Julian.
You didn't? Okay.
No, I'm afraid I didn't. I delivered the screenplay. It was greenlit on my first draft. I've never changed a word of the first draft. And Julian believes in that auteur tradition, and he ran with it. And it was quite contrary to my previous experience.
Did he ever call you with any questions?
No.
Really?
No, we met, but he didn't ask any questions. He likes to have it and make it his own.
Was there anything major that he changed or rewrote during production? Something that surprised you?
He changed things and changed order and things, but the scenes are as written. He put in glaciers coming up and down.
I was going to ask you about that.
I don't know. You better ask him about that. Okay. He's the director. Directors do things.
That's the best open-ended statement.
I'm not going to go on with this. I'm in trouble here. I can see. No, I'm not in any way upset. I think he's done me proud. Well, he's done my script proud, and Janusz even more.
Obviously, with a script like this, it can be modular at times. Yeah. So you can shuffle things around. So.
Yes, because it hasn't got a plot.
That's right.
I mean, it's just... you just find the best order of the events. Well, when you're writing it, that's one order. There are three parts to the film. There's the screenplay, the shooting, and the editing. And I think Janusz is a genius.
Talk about the ending. The decision to kind of come back to the incident of the stroke. When I first saw the movie, it's like they're driving through Paris, they're showing all the landmarks. I'm like, what is this? What are they doing? And then I realized it was the day of the event, and I thought that was great.
Well, what I wanted to do was really have a surprise, our version of a surprise ending.
It was, though.
He goes out in a lovely new car, and suddenly he's stricken with his child in the car.
But talk about the placement of that at the end, because traditionally I was so glad to see it at the end rather than the beginning.
Well, I kept it back because I wanted a surprise at the end. That was the only reason. It was a construction reason. I didn't want to give away the plot.
You speak very good English, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind of you.
My question to you is this: was it always going to be in French, this film, or
no?
So you wrote it in English clearly.
Yeah. And then they called and said they're going to make it. They're going to make it in English and French. And my instincts told me that was going to be impossible because that would be twice the cost. And then what happened was Universal were going to make it with Johnny Depp. I'll tell you another story, a footnote story. I'm going to drop names again. Johnny Depp, is that impressive? No. I was told he loved the script and was going to do it, and he wanted Julian Schnabel to direct it. That's how Julian came on board. And he was in London, Mr. Depp, for the opening of Finding Neverland. And somebody invited me to the premiere and said, would you like to meet him? And I said, yes, very much. And my wife and I were taken up. He's the most wonderful-looking guy, I have to tell you. He's an amazing-looking guy. And he took my hands, and he looked into my eyes, and he said, wonderful script. I can't wait to do it. And when we left him, I said to my wife, he's not going to do this film. I've been around actors for 50 years. I know that look. And he didn't do it. He did 2 pirate pictures back to back. So then there was a hiatus, Jeff. There was a long period. I never heard anything. Then Pathé came in, the French producers. And funnily enough, they wanted to make it in English. And then English and French, and they dropped the English, and then it was made in French.
I'm glad it was, but I almost wish it would have been made in English, but it makes sense because it was his home language, so, yeah. I mean, I understood why they did it.
That's why they cast actors who could speak English and French.
Yeah. Was there anything lost in the translation that you were kind of worried about?
Well, my French isn't good now. I've got terrific restaurant French, but that's about it. But what I wanted, my plays are done, obviously, in France, and I wanted my own translator to do it, because I can trust her. She's done all my plays in France. But she was busy, unfortunately, so I had her check it because I was nervous about it. She checked the translation. She said it's really very, very good, so I had to trust her.
Obviously, the title of the book is the title of the film, but in the film, they're coming up with alternate titles. He mentions one title of The Pressure Cooker. Was there ever any consideration to use that other title?
Not to my knowledge. No one came to me and was saying, should we call it something else, or My Lonely Heart, or
Just curious, because I like the Pressure Cooker title. But
do you?
I mean, but this title is great too. It obviously defines the movie, but this is a hard sell. Like when people say, "What are you screening on Sunday?" and I say, "Oh, we're screening The Diving Bell and the Butterfly."
I say, "What?"
Yes. Yeah. Their faces go a little blank, not due to bad marketing, but they just can't grasp what that title means.
Well, it is a most beautiful image for what has happened here. It is terrific. But no one said to me, do you think we should call it something else?
I was just curious because, studios think of crazy things.
In the case of The Pianist, I said to Polanski we should call it something else because there was the piano player, there was the piano, right. About 20 films to do with pianos. And Roman absolutely refused. He wouldn't have, didn't he? Just kicked it out of court.
I like it when people stick to their guns. We're going to open it up to the crowd for a few questions. For the sake of the podcast, you're going to hear me repeat the question.
Okay.
Right there, you, sir, in the middle. He's really impressed with the way that you master the different geographies and time periods in your works, ranging from Oliver Twist to The Pianist to this film. How do you do that?
I only accept things that come my way, the projects that are offered to me, if they're new. I don't like doing the same thing twice. So it's very exciting for me to find out what the new location is, what the new geography, what the new people are, what the period is, the history. I love doing all that background stuff and getting into it. And that's how I do it. Every time I start a screenplay, it seems like the first screenplay I've ever written. I'm not being humble. It really feels like that, and it's rather exciting. And I can't give you a more detailed answer. It's just because of the subjects I choose are never in the same genre or category.
Do you find yourself doing a lot of research in situations like that?
Not a lot, but I do, and I have to. I mean, if it's a specific, very specific period that I don't know about, I have to read. I mean, if I did a Second World War background, like The Pianist, I did more looking at than reading in The Pianist. We went to Warsaw and saw 3 days of the most ghastly archived material shot by the Germans, which has never been shown to the public.
Did any of that imagery end up in your movie?
Not for me. It was more useful to Roman, and he reproduced it wonderfully. But I described things that I saw, yeah.
Back to his question again, obviously with Oliver Twist, language becomes something that you would maybe need a little research on too to figure out.
No, you've got a 300-page novel. You don't need any more.
Okay.
No, that's my view.
Even when you invent new pieces of dialogue, you don't want to go cross-check it to make sure, would they have been using that word in that era?
You know, I had an English education, even though I was born in South Africa, and Dickens and Shakespeare are part of one's life, you know, so you kind of know what they'd say. And the book has got every kind of line in it, so if you want to make a comparison, you can get the words they use. I don't think that's very different. It doesn't seem to be, anyway.
Cool. Next question. Right there, you, sir, in the middle. How does your work differ when you're preparing a play for the stage versus adapting something for the screen?
That's really the heart of my life, what you've just touched on. This is a stock answer I give, and it's not facile. In the theatre, the place where you sit is called an auditorium. That's a place where you listen. It's not like that in the movies. It's a place where you watch. And the theatre is about language and ideas and the ability to develop character through long playing scenes. It's the most exhilarating work I do. And so why I don't write original screenplays is because any idea that comes to me as a play, if it's an original idea. Movies, you have to find a way of expressing that visually and imagery, very short playing scenes. I think we overdo the short playing scenes now. I think audiences can take longer scenes than we really give them. The commercial has so influenced major movies that we are told the audience have a very short concentration span. I think it's rubbish. I think we underestimate audiences as filmmakers. That's my view. I mean, it's not shared by many, I have to say, but I do think it is true that cinema audiences are frightfully intelligent, they're frightfully quick at the way a story can be told. You know, going back and forth in time, which you can't do in the theatre. The other thing in the theatre, which is also wonderful, why it's so concentrated, is because 2,000 years ago, the Greeks, or 3,000 years ago, said there were rules about plays. It had to be in the same place. It should be in the same place in a 24-hour period, the classical unities. And the third one is that there were three: place, time, and it should seem to be true. And we don't do that anymore. Shakespeare broke that with Henry V. But I found that when I try to do that, to concentrate it in a very short space of time in one place, something quite magical happens. Well, you couldn't do that in a movie. And you can't in a play say 10 years later. You can't say it's spring when it was... It's very, very difficult to do those time changes. It's difficult enough in movies, but it's almost impossible in the theatre. So it's a concentration of thought and language. Language plays such a great part when you're writing a play, which it doesn't do in a movie at all.
And plays are obviously more dialogue-driven too.
Oh, absolutely. It's what they are, because it's where you listen.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question. In reference to you not having writer's block earlier, are there times where you kind of have an inner struggle with your inner critic about some of your work when maybe you've written a scene that you don't like? Talk about your process for rewriting.
I am a rewriter. That's what I do. I am not a writer. I'm a rewriter. I write endlessly. And the computer, of course, is a great aid to rewriting. It's always perfect on the screen. My inner critic is constant. I mean... You go away at night and you sleep and you think, God, I did a good day's work. You come to read that first thing in the morning, you think, God, how could I have written such crap? Or you come back and think, God, that's pretty good. Oh no, I'm firing on all cylinders here. But that's what your inner critic is, and that's how it's like your conscience. You know right from wrong, you know what's good and bad in your writing. And it's constant. A voice is, to me, perpetual. And that's the only way I can describe it.
Were there any early ideas or approaches that you tried with this that didn't work, or maybe a big scene or sequence that you later cut out by the time you handed it in that you wanted to talk about?
That was very unusual, though, Jeff. It always happens that you write a long sequence and you think, how wonderful, and you think it doesn't belong in the film at all. No, this had a certain... Finding that first idea was like hanging out a washing line, and you just hung things on it, and it with pegs, and it just worked. I didn't have to rewrite a lot. I've got a very good inner sense of length. I know not exactly, but I'm good at that. I know 120 pages, not 118. I don't know why, I just know
How long was your draft?
I can't remember. 120, I think. 118 it may have been.
All right. Another question. Something as dark as this always needs a little humor. Could you talk about inputting those traces, and how much of it was yours, how much of it was
both.
Through the direction?
They were both. I mean, I took the clue from him. He was witty about things that happened, but I think I did increase that. I'm an old ham and I like laughs. And there were the thing when his eyes being stitched. The doctor is brutal with it. I mean, he talks about skiing, which is, you cannot be more crass, could you, with a man lying paralyzed in bed and say, I've just been on holiday, I was skiing down Mont Blanc. So I increased that. I mean, I must have fiddled with that a bit. And yes, I just took what was there and elaborated a bit. But what I loved was that his sense of humour somehow chimed with mine. It might be an arrogance on my part, but I don't think it is, and was able to develop his kind of joke when I needed to. And that's another thing, like sentimentality that we were talking about. You have to be careful that you don't overdo that. But his voice was amused by what had happened to him in part.
You also, I mean, obviously imagination is a part of the movie. That's what the butterfly represents. It was interesting to see how you handled the dream sequences with Napoleon's wife and stuff like that. Was there more of that? Was there less?
No, it's not. Yes, Napoleon III's wife. Yes, the Empress Eugenie. Oh, yes, she plays rather a big part because she founded the hospital, and there was a statue to her in the vestibule as you came in. There's a statue to her, and she's a figure he refers to an awful lot in the book. I reduced that. But it's a wonderful, I don't know, the statue being something you pay, in that state, you pay respect to, seemed to me wonderful. So we kept that.
Right here, you sir in the front row. Question was in regards to writing an original work rather than adapting some, another piece of material. How do you remain interested and know that you're on the right track when, of course, there's the blank page and the endless horizon ahead of you?
Well, it's the process of discovery that excites me, finding out, oh, God, he bites his nails. I never knew that. And that's I give you a bad example, but it's that kind of thing. Or he doesn't really love his wife, he's in love with Mrs. Smith down the road. And I discover that by writing. And it'll change the end very much. You think... you know what the final curtain will be. And very often it's not what the final curtain will be because you've made so many discoveries along the road, it can't be that. And I think that's terrific because all preconceptions are thrown to the wind. And that's how I keep my... I wouldn't phrase it quite like you phrased it, but how do I keep my interest? That keeps my interest alive, what I've just described.
This is a heck of a year for you. You're quite busy. You also have Love in the Time of Cholera.
Tonight.
I know. It premieres tonight. Another really intense adaptation. Briefly.
I'm exhausted thinking about it.
What was different about that adaptation from this?
The length of the book.
Obviously.
No, it's 340 pages. A great masterpiece. Everybody says they've read it. I don't believe everybody has. I think it's one of the great unread bestsellers, like Dr. Zhivago. More people saw the movie than read the book. But it's long, and you have to decide what it's about. He's got a fantastically complex time scheme, backwards and forwards, within a sentence. Well, I'm not good at that, so I had to find a way that I could do it. And there's a very curious thing in Love in the Time of Cholera. It opens with the most beautiful sentence: the smell of bitter almonds always reminded him of unrequited love. My God, you think this is on? This is terrific. First 41 pages, the doctor, the old doctor, goes to see the body of a friend who's committed suicide. It has nothing to do with what follows. The rest of it's never referred to again. And it took me some time to realize that, because you had to go through the book. And so I was able to cut that and start at a point where I could tell the story. And I would love to meet Marquez and ask him why that's in. I do not understand why it's there. It's a wonderful description. I mean, beautiful writing and all that, but I don't know what it's doing there. So it was a question of thinning and cutting and constructing. And
what else are you working on? What else is coming out?
I can't tell you. I'm on strike.
Ah, good answer. Good answer. My hat's off to you for that, sir. Anyhow, it's been a great year. You made a great film. Give it up again for our guest, Ronald Harwood.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Thanks again to Ronald Harwood for spending time with us. And, of course, don't forget to see his film, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. You'll be glad you did. If you dug this episode of the podcast in general, consider tossing a virtual tip into our PayPal virtual tip jar by visiting www.creativescreenwritingmagazine.blogspot.com and look for the PayPal icon. Your tips are appreciated and definitely help out with equipment, hard drives, and all the other stuff we need to keep this podcast running. Of course, feel free to check out my blog, which I even managed to update on the rare occasion that I have time to do so by visiting www.jeffgoldsmith.blogspot.com. You can also always feel free to drop me a line by emailing me at yo.goldsmith@gmail.com, and I'll do my darndest to get back to you as soon as I can. Of course, don't forget to click that subscribe button in iTunes or your podcatching software, because that's how episodes are downloaded automatically every time you click refresh. And if you have a minute, feel free to leave us positive feedback in the iTunes Music Store or at podcastalley.com. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, Senior Editor for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, thanking you again for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.